In this tutorial, we're going to go ahead and we're going to bake out some textures for our column inside of Substance Painter. So first thing I'm going to do is I opened up my column project here. This is my name, now I'm B_column. I'm going to come up here and say Tools, Scene Explorer, because I want to see my Scene Explorer. Now you will see that I do have two separate files in here. There's my BN column LP and my BN column HP. Right? My HP has been set up to have subdivisions on it. So now, if for some reason there's been some kind of mistake, you mess something up, and your low poly and high poly are in two different places, it's not the end of the world. If you only have a low poly, is it unwrapped? You can put an unwrap UVW on, open the UV editor, and double check it. Right? If it is UV unwrapped, just right click, say convert to edit poly, and you're going to put one more edit poly on it. You copy that name, and now we're going to go File, Export Selected, and we're going to go to the same folder that it's saved in. That's easy for me to navigate to. Inside there, I'm going to paste that name, BN_column_LP, and then save as type. You want to select FBX. You're going to say Save, and you're going to come down and select Media and Entertainment, and then under Geometry, you want to turn on Smoothing Groups, which then changes it to User Defined. At that point, you just open up Animation and make sure Animation is turned off. And now you're going to say OK, and that exports it out. And now you'll see in your file that there's now an FBX file stored in there. So let's view details here. Right? So now I have an FBX file, a max file, a PNG, and another max file, because I got two versions of my max file. All right, so if you only have your UV unwrapped column LP and you don't have your column HP, don't freak out, just watch the rest of this, and then we'll explain what to happen. Those of you that do have the BN column HP, make sure it's visible and you have it selected so that you can see the name over here on the side. Make sure Use NURMS is checked so that you're getting the subdivided version. Put an edit poly on top of that. Don't collapse it or anything. You do File, Export Selected, and then you're just going to paste the name. And because we already, apparently I didn't copy the name, so I'm just going to do BN column HP. I'm going to do Save. All these settings that we define in FBX are correct, so we're just going to leave that there. We're going to hit OK. So if you have your column HP, if it's stored in another file, you can go to that file and export it out of there. If the two files, the high poly and low poly do not need to exist in the same location. And as it happens, for this particular assignment, we can do it without having an HP. And I'm going to show that to you. All right, so let's pause here, and I'm going to close 3ds Max. I'm going to open up Substance Painter. All right, here we are in Substance Painter, and what you're going to find is that this software gets updated all the time. Now, you can, on your own, if you have the world's fastest PC, and constantly update it to make it be the world's fastest PC, you can keep downloading and updating and getting the most recent versions of Substance Painter. Me personally, I like to pace myself with my updates on this beast, because this machine is a beast, make no mistake. It's going to push your machine harder than anything else you ever touch. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to say new version available. Do I want to download it? No, not today. And then here's this, like many pieces of software. When you first open it up, it's got lots of great links that are very useful, that sort of teach you and introduce you to the project and show you a lot of additional info. Like Substance Share, if you click on that, that's actually a place you can download different materials to use. I'm just going to hit close here. So let's go ahead and window. I'm going to reset my UI to what I believe is the default. Hopefully this is it. My UV layout may be slightly different than your version. You may have a newer version, which may be slightly different. All right, let's jump in here. I'm going to say File, New. And now you want to select a template. My template is defaulting to Unreal Engine 4. That's what I like to use. That's what you're going to use in my class. Let's go to File, Select. And I've navigated to the folder where my columns are located. So I'm going to select the BN column LP, so the low poly. That's when we want to open up. So I'm going to click Open. I'm going to say OK. All right, so here's some things to watch out for. Here is my column. I'm rolling the middle mouse wheel. I hold Alt and the middle mouse wheel to pan, and that works for both views. So let's talk about these. If I hold the left, if I hold Alt and I hold my left mouse button, I can kind of orbit around my model. The left side is a 3D view. The right side is a two-dimensional view, right? It kind of looks like your UV layout, but what you're seeing is an actual material on it. So what we're going to do is we're going to take some of these materials down here and we're going to apply them to our model. But for all these to work, we need to have a series of maps. They're looking for certain bits of information, and we're going to generate those. So let's go here, and we're going to find Texture Set Settings. And inside there, I want you to make sure that your size is nice and big. You want to set it to 2048, which is a really nice, healthy, large detail size. Now we're going to scroll down in here. This is my middle mouse wheel. Now you have mesh maps, right? And so we need to generate all these. The software is going to do it, so we're going to click Bake Mesh Maps. And now in here, you need to change the size. So let's increase our resolution, 2048. And so there's a couple different ways you can bake mesh maps. Right? If you don't have a high poly, you can check Use Low Poly Mesh as high poly and click Bake Selected Textures. Now, it's going to run through and it's going to generate a series of maps. I've changed some of the default settings, so it's not updating the maps as I go in my render viewports, and that helps performance. So I click OK, you see those maps got laid in here. Now that's just using the high poly or the low poly to bake out those mesh maps. If I come in here and I uncheck that, and I now come over here to this little page and click on it, I can select my high poly model and say Open. And I'm going to bake those selected textures again. And now, once it's done, you're going to see a little bit of a difference. You're going to see you can see it's a little bit nicer around the edges, right? Does a little bit more nicer version of a transition there. Let's come over here to Layers. And now what I'll do is I'm going to take one of these maps and drop it on here. So let's do this concrete one. I don't think I have any I think I might have some materials in here that are not the default ones that come with it. If I use something that is not a default, don't worry about it. You can really use anything that's in here. Just keep in mind, you will be using this column in an environment that is an ancient Roman environment. And so I would not recommend going too crazy with it. Like something like plastic fabric is going to look really weird when you put it in your Roman Colosseum level, and you're going to feel silly. So it's fun to experiment with this, but just know that you will reach a point where shame is going to make you want to change it. So just be aware of that. So let's put something else on here. These are basic materials. You can put them on there. There's also these things known as smart materials, which they utilize those mesh maps in order to create detail. So I'm going to hit this little arrow, and you can see there's all sorts of layering on here. Now, this is a really robust and complicated program. There's a lot it can do, and right now we're just going to talk about real basic ways to get you in, moving, and cranking stuff out. Like if I put cement old on here, you can see how nice that looks, right? That looks really great. And you can look and see some of what it's doing, right? There's a sharpening layer on it. There's these things called masks that do all sorts of amazing things. Really, this is something that you're going to dig into again and again over time. Like, let's put something a little bit simpler on here. What's what I'm looking for? Like, It's rock. He's kind of fun. Right, and you can layer them, of course. You can see how the rock's taking the highlight. That's just too much. It looks stupid. But, I mean, there you go. And it's just some basic ideas. Some cobblestone. Nice and simple. Nothing too terribly fancy or elaborate, right? So say I like this. I like kind of how this one's set up. I'm going to come up here. I'm going to save it, right? And so let's go to that same location. And just give it a name. This is my spline columns folder. And now I'm going to do File, Export Textures. And I want to specify a folder, that same one, select it. And then you want to pick an output template. I like to use Unreal Engine 4. I like to do PNGs. I'm going to hit export. And that's going to go ahead and generate those maps. I'm going to close it. So now when I look inside my folder, you see there's all sorts of different bits of information. Let's sort by type and do view large icons. And you'll see that your textures, your two-dimensional images, right, it bakes it out anywhere that you don't have UV data for the mesh. It just takes the pixel and drags it out to the side. Right? I could step through these. And so what you have are three maps. There's base color, normal, and this one, which is occlusion, roughness, and metallic. And so this is what's called a packed texture. There's actually different information stored in the three channels of this image, red, green, and blue. And we'll be plugging them into different materials when we bring it into the game engine. So let's go through it. And first things first, we need to rename these. Right? These names are too long. So I'm just going to right click and say rename. And we're just going to call this BN underscore column underscore BC. Let's fix that first underscore. All right. Now you should name this what your initials are. Right? Underscore column underscore BC. Copy that and then come over here. So all I did was take the name and I abbreviated it. So this is what's called a normal map. Because you have the name of the mesh, the name of the material, and then the type of map. And that's just, it's ridiculous. It's too long. So I could paste in that name I copied from before and just put N for normal. And then here, because this is occlusion, roughness, and metallic, I'm going to paste that name in and just call it ORM for occlusion, roughness, and metallic. All right. Sometimes these will be referred to as AO for ambient occlusion. Right. Some people find that to be more easy because sometimes O is used for opacity, which is translucency on a model or transparency on a model. So what you're going to do is you're going to use the snipping tool and you're going to give me a snip of this view in Substance Painter where you have your model sitting there and you have the material over on the side. And then you're also going to turn in your textures because I want you to be making folders that have the models in it and the textures in it. All right. And you're going to turn in your textures because part of the process here is going to be you learning to rename your files. All right. So let's save that. So I'm going to show you now that this is all complete. Let me show you how this can go wrong sometimes. File, new, select. Sometimes people will select their high poly. And the problem with selecting your high poly is there's no UVs. If you open up your model and you just have this big blank color swatch on the side, then what happened is you imported the wrong model or you exported the wrong model out of 3ds Max. All right, and so that's one thing you can look for. So just keep that in mind as you're working on your project. A good way to check whether or not you're importing the correct model is import the FBX file into a blank Max scene just to double check and see if it has UVs. And then just go through your Max files and take a look and make sure you're looking at the proper one. All right. And so that's setting up basic material baking through Substance Painter.